The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we're going to talk through Austin FC's roster decisions for the offseason. We'll look at the state of the roster and talk about what flexibility, if any, Austin FC has this offseason. And then we'll talk about some other Austin FC news, including a few potential free agents that may or may not be good fits for Austin FC. My name is Landon Cottom, and I'm joined from a hotel room, as is often the case, Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley. So before we get into like the big news of the week, which involves you being shirtless, which is not like I think it normally involves the big news of the week, I want to talk to you about this hotel that I'm in. So I'm in San Antonio at the Menger Hotel, which is most famously known as the place where Teddy Roosevelt formed the Rough Riders.
All right.
And there's Teddy Roosevelt memorabilia everywhere. But apparently it is also one of the most haunted hotels in San Antonio. Maybe in the state. I don't know. It's like half the team that is here is super freaked out about like ghosts, and half of us do not care or do not believe in the whole thing. So where do you, on that spectrum, where do you lay, Landon? If you were in a haunted hotel, would you stay up all night? Would you care? Would you not? What's your take?
Well, two questions. A, what is the body that quantifies which hotel is, quote, most haunted?
That's true. I believe it to be raw number of sightings. So maybe it's like not just like the most intense, not everybody gets beat up by a ghost, but a lot of people see ghosts.
Okay.
I believe is the way that we're quantifying it here.
Second question, is one of the ghosts Teddy Roosevelt?
Well, I hope so, because we're throwing an event. And somebody's like, what if I see Teddy Roosevelt tonight? And I was like, invite him tomorrow. I feel like that would be really good for turnout.
I bet that dude parties too.
Yeah, I bet he does. He's probably down in the bar now while I'm up here doing a show. Yeah. Just thinking like, if I need to throw somebody off the panel to put Teddy Roosevelt on the panel, that would probably be pretty good for me. So like, let's do that.
He would be very confused about what was going on.
Oh my gosh, I know. Teddy, let's talk about workplace safety.
To answer your question, in theory, in the cold light of day, I consider myself someone who does not believe in ghosts. That being said, if I were in a place where someone told me there were ghosts and I like heard something or saw something, I would probably be pretty freaked out and not be able to sleep very well.
So I guess there's actually kind of a middle part of that, which I think I am, where like I can buy the idea of ghosts. This is actually like with me in turbulence on an airplane. Like I understand the concept, but it's like there's nothing I can do. Like if Teddy Roosevelt wants to come cuddle with me, like he's gonna do it, right? Like so. I'm not going to lose sleep over it because I have no agency on like what's going to occur. I don't know if that's good or bad. So.
Yeah. I don't know if I think about those things the same, but
it's the same. Like when I'm on a plane, there's turbulence. It's like, what did you do? I was like, I slept because I don't know how to fly a plane. It's like, I have no, whatever happens.
You can't help.
Right. I can't help. So I'm not going to worry about it. I don't know. That's super weird. Let's talk about you not wearing a shirt and John Gallagher loving it.
Okay, so I posted some photos from the Austin FC Media Cup, and during at the end of the game, we took a big team photo, and I turned to Jeremiah and say, Jeremiah, in a second, I'm going to need you to be my Sebastian Driussi. You'll know what it means. And they take a few pictures. I'm like, wait, one more. Pop the shirt off, hit the John Gallagher flexing pose. And Jeremiah is my Driussi, pointing at my lack of a six-pack, but very enthusiastically. So you pulled it off very well.
Thank you.
That makes into the photos, posted on Instagram. John Gallagher comments on it and says, why am I photoshopped into this picture? Which is just the absolute best. Like, I know that he may not think it, and a lot of other people may not think it. I do love John Gallagher, and this like makes me love him even more.
This is like what I said to you when I saw it. It's like, this is another list of the favorite things that have happened from us doing this show. And this may be like number one now. the coolest thing that's ever happened to us from the show. Because like playing on the field every year at Q2 Stadium is frequently one of my very favorite things that we get to do because of that. It's like to do that and get a photo and have John Gallagher like being a good sport talk about it was perfect.
I mean, you say good sport, and if I know a lot of our listeners have not seen me with my shirt off. If you go to the Instagram and you're really interested in doing that, you can, but you could probably guess from me with the shirt on that me and John Gallagher look very different with our shirts off. So it was very gracious of him to play along with the joke.
Yeah, I love it. It's just that even, I don't know how he finds out about it. Like the world that exists where John Gallagher on.
Oh, I tagged him.
The date. What? Oh, did you tag him?
That's how he found out about it.
Okay. It's like, what is John Gallagher doing on the day before Thanksgiving? Like randomly looking at Instagram.
I tagged me as John Gallagher and you as Sebastian Driussi. Driussi did not comment.
Yeah, guess who didn't comment on that? Yeah, well, what a shock. He's probably busy, I don't know, playing emo records and listening to Emiliano Rigoni play the guitar or whatever they do down there now. All right. Then last Monday, we record a show. We talk about how Austin FC roster decisions have to be out by Wednesday. That we really hoped what didn't happen was a repeat of the Moon Tower curse, and that on Tuesday morning before lunch, before half of the people who listen to the show even listen to the show, we were going to get the roster decisions because we were going to sound like fools, largely based on our opinions. And then what happened?
Yeah, roster decisions come out, and as far as like predictions, we were wrong on a couple, but I think justifiably. But let's talk through them here. So I think as we go through these, maybe like a useful way to frame it for discussion's sake is, are we surprised by this decision? And then how do we feel about this decision? So we have these grouped into kind of the category of what the decision was to make. So we have options that were exercised, options that were not exercised, and then one new contract signing. So let's start with the exercised options. We have Danny Pereira. That one, are we surprised? Absolutely not, right?
No, not surprised. How do we feel about it? Great. Can you imagine a world where Austin just chooses not to pick up a Danny Pereira contract? I mean, maybe Claudio Reyna was still in charge, but any other world, like that seems literally impossible. So no, I feel like this is a no-brainer. I think the only possible question was like, which is still open, is does he get sold somewhere for a profit later? But that doesn't play into whether Austin should exercise his option or not.
Yeah, and I think there were a couple of possibilities here. The other one being them just signing him to a new contract because it is just one option year through 2026. So my prediction here is we either see like a contract extension for Danny Pereira in the near future, or we see him gone in the near future, because the closer you get to the end of that contract, a guy like Danny is going to have options. Where those are and like the level of them, that's debatable. Who knows exactly what his options would be, but there are options. And so the closer you get to the end of that contract, the more of a risk it is that he just walks away for free. And that would be a huge mistake by Austin FC that I'm almost positive they're not going to let happen. So yeah, I would expect him to be gone very soon or sometime in the next few months for them to start working on a new contract if they're not already working on that.
Right. And this exercising this option doesn't preclude them from working on the new contract, right? It's just like a thing you need to do to make it work. I think the next one is one that is somewhat one we didn't expect and is maybe controversial. And this is Stefan Cleveland gets his option exercised.
Yeah. So are we surprised? Yeah, a little bit. I am a little bit surprised. And then how do we feel about it? I would say not great.
And why do you feel not great about it?
I just think like we'll get into like Damian Loss has been called back into the team, and we saw this last year too, right? Where he like is returning to Austin FC, but he's going to go back out on loan somewhere. Probably that was it seemed and felt that way, that was always going to be the end solution. Louisville City on Instagram was responding to a post. I think it was on the Damien's goodbye post, or maybe the club saying like, or maybe it was a different post altogether, but there was an announcement that like Damien's leaving in a way that like I don't think happened the year before.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It had a very different vibe, but yeah, go into the reply too.
But then, yeah, there was a reply to some post about like, if we get a Louisville City fan saying, if we get Loss back, we'll have a pretty complete roster. And the Louisville City club account responded saying, Austin FC, something along the lines of Austin FC plan to keep Damien Loss this season. And so like, it's kind of funny to see a USL club like breaking transfer news for us on their official Instagram account. But like that points to like maybe Austin FC are planning on keeping him here. So I think it's dumb to have both of them, which makes me hope that they're working on some kind of move for Cleveland, a trade or something like that with someone else. And so by exercising the option, they now have leverage to trade and maybe get some assets out of it, as opposed to just letting him walk away for free. If like, I struggle to believe that there's a huge market out there for Steph Cleveland right now. Not to say there's none, but I'm hoping that they knew there was one, and that's what led to them picking up this option. Otherwise, like, I don't know what the plan is.
Yeah, I agree. There's no reasonable world where all three of these guys are still in Austin. And when we get a little bit later in the show, we talk through the schedule. Maybe we can kind of talk through like when we might see Steph Cleveland news. But I was surprised by this. And for another reason we'll get into in the middle part, like it doesn't seem great unless there's like a real clear plan for what to do with him. And I feel like we've seen Rodolfo Borrell make great trade moves to get things that we didn't necessarily expect out of players, but those also seem to be out of, trades out of the league. And I have to imagine that the Stephen Cleveland market is within MLS.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It would be domestic for sure. But like, I don't know how much is a team willing to pay for him on his current salary and on a senior roster spot? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
It doesn't seem like a great one. The next guy that is on this list, I don't think we talked about because I didn't realize he was like on an option and he doesn't pass through my like frame of awareness very often. And this Riley Thomas gets his option picked up for next year on a supplemental.
Yeah. I mean, so are we surprised? Maybe a little bit, but not entirely, mainly because like you said, it's a supplemental spot. It's pretty low risk. And so, yeah, not super surprised. How do you feel about picking up Thomas's option?
I mean, I'm good with it because I feel like Burrell has not been using all of his supplemental spots, especially like 2 years ago, right? So this seems like exactly the kind of guy you should have on a supplemental and see if he's going to develop or not. And you can always play him on the second team, and he seems like decent depth. So, like, yeah, I'm good with keeping him here.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now. He is 23 years old, will be 24 in March. So 24, close to the beginning of next season. So not super duper young, but is also like, he's a good athlete. And I think that's part of when you're looking at this, like there's some guys who are really talented, but aren't going to have the physical ability to kind of hang at an MLS level. I think Riley Thomas probably is there, or at least like within touching distance of that. So yeah, maybe they've seen enough at the second team level to think that he's worth spending a supplemental roster spot on, and could maybe be useful in one way or another for the first team, whether it just be in training and stuff, or for like an emergency option to actually play for the first team. Next one we have for exercise options is Brendan Hines-Ike, which it said, I don't remember the actual language here, but it was
based on performance or results or something. Like it was an automatic trigger, which was the, what was that? The Alex Ring?
Alex Ring and Emiliano Rigoni.
Yeah. So I still I'm not sure why the team used that specific wording other than it being true. I'm not surprised. I feel like this team needs to have Brendan Hines-Ike come back. I feel like there's enough gaps everywhere that like having a MLS starting caliber center back on a decent contract is a thing that we need.
He was on $325K guaranteed compensation in 2025. We talk about the auto trigger. I know that we have been burned by that as Austin FC fans and as a club. I'm guessing this is not going to be a DP contract like Alex Ring had, or it wasn't based on touching the field 11 times or whatever like Emiliano Rigoni had. This is probably a little bit of a pay raise, and they built it in like saying, okay, you're a veteran coming back from some injuries, prove yourself and we'll give you that next year. And he did it. So maybe when the numbers come out in the spring, we'll feel differently about that. But for now, I feel pretty good about this. And I'm not expecting the number to be anything crazy.
All right, well, let's go through a couple declines that I think are kind of no-brainers. Diego Rubio on a supplemental. I don't know if it's a no-brainer, but it's one we talked about last week. I feel like we shared our feelings about Diego Rubio. I think we did agree that like if we could get him back on another supplemental, that'd be cool. We're not surprised by it, and it seems like he's going to do something else.
Yeah, I am still a little surprised by this one. And Phil West, I think on Emergency Podcast, said that he had a source tell him that I think I'm repeating this correctly, that he had a source tell him that it wasn't due to like injury concerns, which we kind of speculated about that last week. But yeah, I don't understand. Like if you're giving Riley Thomas a supplemental spot, like how is Diego Rubio not worth one? There's a lot we don't know behind the scenes, so who knows what the deal was. But all that said, like how do we feel about it? I'm a little sad about it, but also a guy at his age who's like had some really bright moments for us. Like I'm not going to be losing sleep over him leaving as far as like on-field output goes. I like the guy. I'm a little bit sad about the personality leaving in the locker room leadership leaving. But on-field output, like, yeah, I would imagine this is not going to be something we're looking at next year saying like, oh man, if Diego Rubio were here.
If only Diego Rubio had been back with his.
If we are saying that, then the season's probably going very poorly.
Yeah. And then Jimmy Farkerloon, I think is somebody we also expected to not be back. I feel like his greatest moment in an Austin FC jersey was the multiple Austin FC jerseys in the store that I think we talked about in the past.
Yeah, we should repeat that story in case people don't remember it. When he signed his contract, because you can get taken in the draft and you'll come into camp, but you don't get signed immediately. So the day he actually signed, he went to the Verde store and took a picture of several Farkerloon jerseys hanging on the racks at the Verde store. And I think Mike went that day to go see if they were there, and they were not. And he asked the staff there, and they said, oh no, he just had those made and hung them up in the store to take pictures and then took them down and took them home with him.
Which is awesome. So yeah, I'll miss the personality.
The Jimmy Time celebration as well. Like that whole meme is great as well. So the personality again, but the guy, I think he's like 25 years old, was just a good, like an okay to good MLS Next Pro player, even by the end of last season. So yeah, not a huge surprise that they're not picking this one up.
Let's take one more out of order because I know who we need to close with. So new contract, Ilie Sanchez. I feel like somewhat surprised by this. I mean, we'll see when the number comes out, but definitely a senior roster slot. I feel okay about it depending upon how much we're paying him, but I need that number to be like half what we paid him last year. Like, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I've said the last few weeks that like I thought the only way you could justify doing it is getting him on a supplemental roster spot. All of Austin FC's roster pages and stuff are updated, it seems, for the most part, and all of them still list him as a senior roster spot. So if that is to be believed, he is still on a senior roster spot, which I just really don't like. Because at that point, it kind of doesn't matter what the number is, because we are going to be tight on cap space, but the senior roster spots, as we'll get into later in the show, we're going to kind of take account of that and talk about how much room we actually have left. Spoiler alert, it's not much. And so bringing him on, retaining that senior roster spot as a guy who hopefully he proves us wrong, but as a guy I'm predicting not to be a guy you're going to be able to depend on to start 34 games for you. Yeah, I love having the guy here, love having the leadership, but it makes me nervous to use a senior roster spot on his body.
Well, he's very handsome too. So you just mean the fact that his body will like hold up throughout the course of a season. It's another one of those where I love the dude, but if he's starting 30 matches, there's bigger things wrong with the club. All right. Like a good team like LAFC when he came to Austin is not relying on him in the way that it seems like Austin FC might have to rely on him.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. And like it's all relative, right? Like the games when he looked at his best, if we had that Ilie for 34 games for last year's Austin FC team, that would have been great. But I don't think even him at his best was going to be the guy to like push us towards an MLS Cup run or anything like that. So there needs to be some difference makers brought in, and we're limiting the number of shots we're going to get to take to do that.
All right, let's talk about the Julio-sized hole in this discussion. Julio Cascante, I don't think a surprise at all, has his option declined. I know we talked about the Verde All Day article last week, and this is something a lot of people were expecting. We talked about something that we were expecting. But, I mean, it's like the number's not great, and I do not want to have them back on this team, especially given roster flexibility. But it's, it's a piece of like OG Austin FC history that has walked out the door too. And he had a very gracious post about it. So why don't you share a little bit more about sort of how you feel about the Julio being gone?
Yeah, I mean, Julio Cascante, the player, Julio Cascante, the salary receiver. It was the thing that had to be done. But looking at the human side of this, seems to be just a really lovely person, a really good teammate. All of his teammates love him. Younger guys talk about him being one of the guys who helped them out. Like that part of it. And then you mentioned Ilie being handsome. Like Julio Cascante, I know Steph Crignola believes this. I think I believe this too, is like number one all-time handsomeness as far as like looks and style go combined.
Handsome and stylish. Yeah, I feel like he's like a double. He's a like, what do they call him in college football? Like the double threat.
Double
right?
threat.
Yeah, he can run and throw. Yeah, he's both handsome and stylish, and not everybody is that way.
So very sad to see Julio Cascante, the man, leave. That I think that will be something that will be missed. And this is something you were talking about off air about, like, he is like an Austin FC player, right? Like what were you saying before we started recording?
Yeah, I had this vision in my head that it's just a guy that spent a long time in Portland and sort of came to Austin FC fully formed. And like he was a Portland guy that spent a little bit of time in Austin. But if you look at the actual numbers, so he comes to Austin in 2021 at 27 years of age. He played 5 seasons in Austin, 3 in Portland. But most importantly, he played 125 matches, started 112 in Austin, played 48 matches and started 38 in Portland. Like, he's an Austin FC guy, and he's one of the few like Austin FC originals that even through this year where he only started 9 matches, like he was still like an integral part of the team. And it's something that as his team matures, we're going to get more of, is like these players walking away. And I think that becomes, it's just a different perspective than some of the other options that were declined.
It's weird to be at a point where, I think that's maybe why we're surprised by it. It's like weird to be at a point where we're a club old enough to have that. Like to have guys who have been here for a long time. And like have them like this be the club that they are associated with, which I think will absolutely be the case with him. And this is kind of the first one where I think you could definitively say that, of like a veteran came in is going to be seen as an Austin FC player for the rest of his life, probably for the rest of Austin FC's life. Like we'll look back and like he's going to be one of those OG guys. And like who else could you say that about?
Him and Brad, right? I feel like are the only two.
But of
So I would
ones that
imagine-
have left.
Oh, of ones that are left. Because I was going to say, even the ones that are like still left, like Owen and Danny, they're probably going to have a legacy somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, when they leave,
Right.
their legacy will be here. But you're right. Like, if all things go to plan, they're hoping to make bigger legacies elsewhere, right? And like Alex Ring would be one where he like personality and impact wise, when he left, like that was kind of a big moment. But his
best
years
days were in New York, right?
Yeah, so I think it's hard to say that he is solely an Austin FC player. And I think you can say that about Julio Cascante.
Yeah, I can too. So it's just, and I appreciated his graciousness. I don't know where he's going. They'd probably go back home, probably and play, right? Like if you think about where his like ultimate outcome is, but like his posts were great. His thanks to fans were great. His interactions with people on Instagram who like DM'd him to tell him they're going to miss him were great. Like it's just, he's a really good person and a great ambassador for Austin. Also, smart call on the football side of things to not bring him back.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Later in the show, we're going to talk about Austin FC's current state of the roster and kind of what options we have going forward. And then we're also going to talk about some free agents, some who have been connected to Austin FC and some who have not, that we're just kind of blue skying here. But yeah, we'll talk about all that when we're back from this break.
When no one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FBF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FBF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community transparency and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment that you can check out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to FBF.law to find out what makes FBF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FBF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending. Amplify
membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. All right, we are back. In a little bit, we're going to talk about some free agents that are going to be available this offseason and why they do or don't necessarily fit with Austin FC. But before we do that, let's look at the state of the roster. We talked about Austin FC's roster profile page on austinfc.com being seemingly updated already after these roster moves, which thank you so much, Austin FC comms team, because for so long, MLS websites were very bad and it would take months for them to catch up or whatever. So seeing this up to date within a week, beautiful. Chef's kiss. Thank you. But let's look at this and it's like, what do we have left? What flexibility does Rodolfo Borrell have right now? So let's look at like each different roster designation, I guess. So looking at the senior roster, we thought maybe we were going to open up a few senior roster spots. It turns out we opened up one senior roster spot because they exercised Steph Cleveland's option, because they signed Ilie Sanchez to a senior roster. So we believe maybe there's an error here and that's not true, but all signs are pointing towards that being the case. Currently, we have 2 senior roster spots open, which is not ideal.
Yeah, and I think if you compare it, so you can have 20 senior roster spots. Senior roster players, Austin has 18. I think compared to years past, this seems really low. I remember last season, Burrell talking about not having a lot of flexibility, and I feel like that was when there were like 3 or 4 spots open. And when we were talking through this just off air a minute ago, I mean, thank God that the Nicky Boloco experiment like went the way it did, or we would have only one spot when he came through town, never played a game, and then left. So like, there's not a lot of flexibility here with how the roster stands today, which I think is going to lead us eventually to talk about like what are the creative options to dig Austin out of this hole. So like, yeah, senior, not a lot of choices, and even the supplemental now at this point, which can be up to 10, I think, and Austin is almost in each of these designations, they're like very specific. There's spots that players can fill based upon their age and their homegrown status and whatever, but like Austin is typically not filled all of those, and like now we're sitting at 6 of those being occupied now by Micah Burton, CJ Fodre, Damian Loss, Raleigh Thomas, Irvin Torres, and Owen Wolf.
Yeah, so that's been a thing that like in a lot of Austin SC's history has like there's been plenty of supplemental roster spots, right? So
yeah,
that's not really the case there either. But going back to the senior roster, what are the ways in which we could potentially still open some senior roster spots? So we talked about Danny's future. That's the thing that I could see realistically happening this offseason is trading or selling Danny Pereira would open up a senior roster spot. So that's one thing to do. That could also open up some, just gain some resources for Burrell to spend on another player too. We talk about like the other big prospect in the system right now, Owen Wolf. Owen Wolf is on a supplemental spot because of his homegrown status. So he would not open up a senior roster spot, which is what I would argue that maybe now is the time. If you're going to sell one of them, like you feel like you need to sell one of them to give yourself more flexibility building the roster, that Danny might be the one to go for. So that would be one way. Another way would be a buyout. I know we had a question a couple of weeks ago from a listener about buying a player out, and I think it was more aimed at designated players. Mike Cragnola told me the next day, and I think you brought this up independently, but Jader Obrian is who Mike said. How would you feel about that one?
Given his playing time and production and how Nico seems to rate him, that seems like a really good candidate for that, because you open a senior roster spot up and you open an international slot up too. International slots being something we currently have 0 available of also. So like the combination of those things, I think we looked it up. He has like 1 year left on his contract. He's not making that much money. Like that becomes a really appealing thing to me in terms of opening that slot up. And I guess Robert Taylor is like maybe the other person you could do that with, because I think maybe he's on kind of a low contract because of the acquisition cost. But I'd like to see more from Robert Taylor too, and he's been more productive.
Taylor was last year. He's not on that low of money now. His guaranteed compensation as of the end of 2025 was $633,000, where Jader Obrian was on $505,000 guaranteed. So it would be a bit more expensive to buy out Taylor, but I think one way of looking at it is like, what's the cost of an international roster slot? It's like between 100 and, if you're the New England Revolution for whatever reason, like 500,000. So
You're right.
You could look at it as saying like, okay, Obrian is not terrible. He's not a terrible guy to have on the roster, but if you can spend $500K to essentially buy a senior roster spot, buy an international roster spot, maybe that's worth it for the 1 year left on his contract to pay that $500K and just call it done. I could see that happening. The Taylor one, I would be more surprised about, given that they just traded for him at the beginning of last season. That would surprise me a bit more. The one that I'm really hoping happens, we already mentioned this in the first segment, is trading Steph Cleveland. We already talked about why it might be difficult, but I think that would be the ideal way to do it. And I'm really hoping they're working on that right now.
Yeah, I mean, if literally anybody has any interest in him, the senior roster slot is worth more than whatever somebody would offer. If it's $7 in GAM, that's the senior roster spot is like worth that.
Another thing that could be in the works that we didn't mention in the first segment is maybe they have something lined up to sell Damian Loss. That would bring in money and resources to use on the roster, but it doesn't help your senior roster spots. Your hands are still tied there pretty tightly. So you would have the money, but you have those 2 spots to spend it on, and you can't really afford to miss. I mean, that's the story of every Austin FC offseason in existence.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, we'll see. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit here in a second about like the dates coming up. So it might be a while before we know anything, but I'm really hoping that Rodo finds a way to open up more spots and give himself, if we're looking at transfers as lottery tickets, instead of only having 2 to bring in to really boost this roster, to have maybe 3 or 4 chances to bring in some senior spots to change the roster.
Yeah, because at this point, again, look, you mentioned that. Like, Austin has to hit on basically every. To make this work, Austin FC has to hit on basically every move, and has to have past moves develop, right? Like, you have to get more from Basar Savovic than Austin's seen so far. You have to get more from Djordjevic than Austin's seen so far, right? Like, the development of this team is counting on those guys to develop, and also for Austin to add.
Dubrsarski is one who I think really needs to step up this year. You could name half the roster that we need to get more out of if this team wants to compete at a higher level. And so that's going to be on Nico Estevez, whether that's fair or not. Maybe these pieces aren't good enough. That could be the reality, but it's going to be the thing he's asked to do. Hopefully Burrell can help him some, but you're 100% right that we need to find a way to get more out of what we have and bring in some help. We need both of those things to happen in order for, like, maybe even for Austin just to make the playoffs. What if the West is better and half the league doesn't want to, is like actively trying to miss the playoffs for some reason? Like, what if that doesn't happen again this year? It might be tough for Austin FC even to make the playoffs with this same roster, performing the exact same way. So there's work to do. Let's talk about when that work is allowed to start, Jeremiah.
Okay. Yeah, because you've left me feeling really dark right now. So you go through that. We go through DPs, which they already know. Austin has 3 out of 3. You go through international players, get to set. Austin has 8 out of 8. So 1 U22 position open, but can you have 3 DPs and 3 U22s?
You can have,
I don't know. It doesn't matter because you'd have to have a domestic U22 because there are no international slots available too. So like, that doesn't seem like a great use of that roster designation. So like, Austin's kind of stuck in all the other ways that Austin could do things without players going out, without players being sold, without a buyout.
Yeah, it's 3 and 3. Or you can do 4 U22s and 2 DPs.
Okay, so they could
and
add.
Then, so it's the 3-3 model or the 2-4-2, and the last 2 in that 2-4-2 is you get an additional $2 million in allocation money if you choose that second model. So because we have the 3 DPs, we could sign. We have Dubrsarski and Djordjevic as our current U22s. We could sign one more, but they take a senior roster spot. So it's still pretty tight, and U22s don't have a super high hit rate. And so if we're counting on a U22 to come in and be the difference maker, that's a pretty big gamble.
Right. You need that person to be like a contributor, but not the difference maker.
Oh, sorry. I teed you up to move on to the next section. But one other thing to mention, you talked about international roster slots. There is a very real possibility, and maybe even a likelihood, that they're working on a green card for one or more players right now. So
right.
That's a thing that may come through. Like, I could see Biru. He's been here a while now.
Bukhari,
Obrian,
I feel like it's been here long enough. Yeah.
Who did you say?
I'm Bukhari.
Oh, yeah, potentially. I know things are weird with the federal government at the moment. I'll leave it at that. So maybe it's more difficult than it was a year or two ago. But as it worked in the past, it seems like at least 1 or 2, if not more, of these guys would kind of be at the mark where you'd expect maybe some of them could get a green card now.
Yeah, I was going to say Obrian is the one, but like you could just get rid of him and that solves a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So The green card is my least favorite option for what happens to Hot Air Obrion at this point.
Okay, now let's look forward and like, what are the dates when we could potentially start seeing some changes be made here?
Okay, so we're not going to talk through the whole schedule because I feel like this is best done when it's real. But just like over the next couple of weeks is when it starts to happen. So on December 10th, which is 8 days from now in show release time, that's when free agency opens up. On December 11th, that is when the re-entry draft happens. And it's also end of season waivers. So this becomes the first time to plug those holes. And there's other things down the road too. And I don't know that we should expect a lot to happen right when things open, especially with a roster that's like this precarious in terms of additional players. But this is when we can start maybe seeing things. And I think this is when we'll start seeing. We'll talk about this. This is when we're going to start seeing rumors about like people coming in for sure.
Right, because it's when free agency opens. It's not when free agency closes. Like free agency could go on until the beginning of the season, really, and does oftentimes, right? So don't expect if Austin's going to sign a free agent for it to happen on the 10th. That is just the first day that they could if they wanted to.
Yeah, and I mean these are not.
But that being said, the re-entry draft is a thing that would happen within a couple of days, right? So re-entry draft is folks who don't qualify for outright free agency. This is one of the dumber MLS rules, I think, where to be a free agent, you have to be, I think it's 25 years old and have played 4 years in the league. I think I'm getting those numbers right. If you do not meet that criteria, you can still go to another team, but you have to go through the re-entry draft and teams kind of can call dibs on you. And it's a little bit stricter on like what kind of money they can give you and things like that. So that will happen over the course of a couple of days. That being said, it just not a lot of players get picked in those. Hot Air Obrion was one of them that got taken in recent history, but I think there's one other player that year, and that seems to be kind of how it goes. It's like 1 to 4 players might get taken in the re-entry draft, and that's kind of it.
So we shouldn't expect much of that either. I love that's how this show's going. We're on expectations for where Austin's going to find players.
Set your expectations low is the message of this offseason, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I think that we just talked about this, in the last bit, but like development from within is probably what is going to make a difference. The biggest difference. Not that there's no difference, but yeah, like the biggest opportunity is going to be from within.
All right. We're going to talk about some free agents who look like they're going to be available this offseason. One has actually been linked with Austin FC via some very credible reporting. And then there's a list of others who maybe they would work, maybe they would even be options, or maybe they don't make any sense at all. But we'll talk through some of those when we get back from this break.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com.
And our premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space, from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities, but only supports this podcast because
Landon, you won a Best Friend Award from a very credible source a few weeks ago that we talked about, and McGuire Woods Consulting loves people who are really good friends.
I did see Logan in Los Verdes Slack. I sent a picture of my gold medal in friendship award, and he photoshopped it to say Austin FC Media Cup Defensive MVP, but still written in Sharpie.
I love that. I love the creativity from people who are more creative than us, which feels like a very broad universe at this point, especially when it comes to graphic design, for sure. It's not our passion. Words are our passion.
Contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information. All right, we are back. We're going to talk some free agency talk here. A few guys who might look appealing on paper, but maybe don't make sense in practice. And then some others who might be real possibilities. And then we'll get into those here in a second. But there is one that, like I mentioned before the break, Austin FC has been actually connected to a free agent by credible reporting. This is from Nico Moreno up in Seattle. Nico regularly breaks Seattle transfer news, MLS transfer news. So this is legit if he's talking about it. And this is center back John Bell. He is a 28-year-old center back, born and raised in the U.S., but has played internationally for Jamaica a few times. And so represents another country, but does have U.S. citizenship, and so would not take up an international roster spot. Played in college, got drafted by the Revs, I believe, New England Revolution. Played for St. Louis City, didn't really get a lot of run out there. Then got picked up, I believe, in what is the draft we just talked about? The re-entry draft.
Re-entry draft?
For free by Seattle, and played for them for a couple seasons. I think he had like 15 appearances, but a lot of those came this year, and was kind of like their third or fourth center back for that team. I watched some film on John Bell. I mean, I'd seen him play, but maybe Austin I didn't even look up if he ever played against Austin, but I'd like seen this guy in the field, but I was never actually paying attention to John Bell. Might not be a surprise to anybody, but I went back and watched a little bit of tape on him. I would love to be able to tell you that he is like this diamond in the rough, that Seattle is making a huge mistake by letting him leave. And if Austin signs him, he's going to come in and change everything. I don't think that's true, but I will say he is the kind of like low budget free agency signing that I think we've like thought Austin FC was making several times.
It's never worked.
And weren't really.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a guy like a very credible MLS center back. He's not going to be your star defender, but he's completely capable. Good enough on the ball, good enough athlete, pretty good size. Like, and by like, according to Nico Moreno, and I think maybe Jeremiah O'Shan, I read somewhere else, but like, it seems to be a good locker room dude. People like him. So there's a lot of good things to point towards here. My biggest question is going to be, again, the money. Looking at his, I was saying this before, looking at his salary history, the Sounders had an option on him last year and they picked it up. And this season, he's like just over the senior minimum and was on a senior roster spot, which I'm guessing the reason they're not picking him up is because they don't want to use a senior roster spot on their like third or fourth center back. They also have a big prospect coming through. I think he's 19 now, Stuart Hawkins, who got some MLS minutes this year, but I'm like the way Seattle pushes young guys through, I'm guessing they're going to want to use him as maybe that fourth option, and he will be on a supplemental roster spot. So I could see like that's probably the reason why a completely capable center back is not being given a new contract here. The big question is like, if he was going to be on a supplemental or they thought they could get him on a supplemental, maybe he would have just stayed there, which means
right.
Is Austin FC going to sign John Bell, a third or fourth center back, and use one of their two senior roster spots on him?
Well, those are kind of two different questions in a way, because I feel like it would be really common for a third for sure, and maybe a fourth center back to be on a senior roster slot for any team. But the way Austin is configured, we don't have that kind of flexibility. And then it becomes like, the question becomes like, does he take one of the available spaces? You know, unless you get back to like, does Austin free things up? Because, you know, if you believe that Austin should have the flexibility to play five at the back more, you know, depending upon situations, like center back depth is still a need for sure, with Julio being gone, regardless of the development of Djordjevic or not. So I'm like, it's intriguing, but I kind of agree with you. It's like one of these guys that means nothing to us until he enters our like frame of reference, and then he becomes very important. So I don't know. There's probably like 10 John Bells out there. Maybe not 10, but 6 John Bells out there who are like signable, who might be interesting players at the right number, who might or might not be able to help Austin. And then like it becomes Burrell's job to figure out like which one of those guys is the one that contributes the most to what can happen here.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a thing we'll say in the next little section where we're talking about other free agents is, in a vacuum, would this guy help this team? Would he make this Austin FC team better? Yes. The answer is going to be yes on a lot of them. But in the greater context is like, with your precious cap space, with your precious roster spots, is this the player you should be using that on? Is this the profile you should be going after? If it means you can't go after another profile that you probably need more, that's where a lot of these are going to fall into, including John Bell here. Like if it's a supplemental spot, no brainer, man. Like a capable supplemental roster spot center back. I just don't know that John Bell's going to go for that. Like he's shown enough of himself that I'm guessing some team would give him a senior roster spot. So I don't know how that's going to turn out. All that said, he is a very capable player. I would be happy, again, all of that other stuff aside, if he were our third or fourth center back. That's great. That's really, really good. But yeah, it concerns me if it's on a senior.
Yeah, so like maybe talk about a little bit about him as a player, maybe how he differs. You said you watched him film. I'm thinking like how he differs specifically from Julio, because I feel like that's whoever we sign as a center back, that's who they're effectively replacing. Like, do you feel like he fits in better to what Austin's trying to do than Julio Cascante does? Ignoring the salary number somehow, like in a way that you really can't.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. I watched like half of 2 games. If we sign him, I'll watch more and dig deeper into it. But first glance, it seems like output wise, utility wise, it would be similar, maybe overall, maybe similar to Julio, but on what, like a fifth, a sixth of the price.
Yeah, right.
So on that, I think the trade is fair there. Like, yeah, it works out well. I don't think he's as good on the ball as Julio, but he's a better athlete, moves a lot better than Julio does. So I think the trade-off is like, you're getting a guy who's a better overall defender and maybe losing this one special gift that Julio is actually really good at.
All right, let's talk about free agents and who may be out there.
I made a list of some intriguing ones. I may be missing some, but I kind of made a list of ones who might be interesting to Austin, or just like higher profile ones that are out there right now. So a few that just don't make sense at all. There's some really good goalkeepers available right now. Like Austin doesn't need that, right? We've got too many. We don't need a starter. If we needed a starter, sure, maybe take a chance on one of these, but none of these guys are going to be backups or don't want to be backups. And even if they would, they're going to be too expensive to be a backup. So Carlos Coronel, Maxime Crépeau, there's several other guys who are maybe like borderline starters for a lot of teams that are available right now. But yeah, just it doesn't make sense for Austin right now. A couple that we've already talked about. Christian Espinosa, still no news there, but he's likely going to get a DP deal. Doesn't make sense for Austin. Walker Zimmerman, like I said, like he would make Austin FC better, but is that where you should use your precious resources? I don't think Austin FC can really afford to do that right now. One that might make a little bit of sense for Austin, and probably makes sense for a lot of teams in MLS, but Paul Rothrock from the Seattle Sounders. He didn't come to an agreement with the Sounders. He's going to test the market and see what he can get. Nico Moreno, once again, is reporting that Rothrock wants upwards of $800,000. He's currently on $100,000 on a supplemental roster spot, mind you. I think Seattle probably looked at, like, Paul and his camp came to the Sounders and said, this is what I want. And the Sounders said, you've been a good soldier, but we're not giving you that. Go test the market, see what you can get. I think the Sounders are probably hoping he's going to go out. Nobody's actually going to give him that much. And they'll come back and give him the $500,000 or $600,000 that they might
if they want to.
Worth.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like of any team in the league that you cannot compare roster construction and like player value to, I feel like Seattle's like the worst possible comparison. Somebody that's like not worth whatever to Seattle is probably worth the same amount to Austin, just because Seattle has done such a good job over decades building a roster that they are able, just like LAFC can do, right? Like just roll guys through in a way that few people can. So like what a player is worth to Seattle and what a player is worth to Austin are probably not the same. That doesn't answer the question whether Austin can actually afford, what he wants, but he might be worth it to Austin in a way that he's not worth it to Seattle.
Yeah, and I think the problem is he's going to be worth it to a lot of teams in the way that he's not to Seattle.
Sure.
And I think it was in Matt Doyle's article. He had an article about free agents and talking about Rothrock. He kind of gave a word of caution to MLS teams saying like, Rothrock is a good piece, but you should not like throw a huge bag at him and expect him to be like the guy on your team, because he's just not that kind of player. And so Austin FC, you're saying, okay, Julio's out. Rothrock wants $800K. Let's just give him Julio's salary and bring him in, throw him on the left wing, boom, call it done. I think it would be a better use of $800K than Julio has been. But it doesn't solve our real issue, I don't think. Like Rothrock is not, I think he had 7 assists this year, but he's a really strong, like off ball presence, making runs all the time, doing lots of work that creates space for other people. Very useful, would help Austin FC. It does not help our chance creation issues. He's not that kind of guy. He's not a string puller. He's not a line breaker, not a lock picker. He's like a menace in and around the box that will get some assists and stuff because he's in and around the box, but it's not the like creative number 10 kind of assist, if that makes sense.
I agree. It does make sense. And also, I don't know how you find that player in free agency, period. So I don't think any of the guys we're going to talk about are going to be able to fill that gap. I just want to bring one up that it's a terrible idea, but it's just super interesting. And that is a old striker that's now available too. Christian Benteke.
Oh, yeah.
Scored 10 goals last year, scored what? Like won or almost won the Golden Boot the year before.
And he was injured a lot this year as well, which is why his number was lower. I think if he had kept on the pace that he was at, he would have had a really high number this year too.
But also 34. I'd love to see the Austin fan base reaction to like a guy who has a history of scoring goals, who's on the wrong side of 30 and kind of plays the same position as 2 of our DPs.
I was going to say, what formation are we going to play when Brandon Vasquez comes back and Mirto Uzuni needs to be on the field?
It's a three striker lineup. No midfield.
He did announce, I think they were still in talks with DC. He made a goodbye post today saying like he's not coming back to DC. It was vague like what he would be doing. So he could potentially be available for like a high TAM contract. In that case, like it would be doable for Austin probably, but like is the case with so many of these guys, like is that where you need to spend all of your resources? Probably not. And there's a lot of other guys who are going to be free agents. Could some of them help Austin? Sure, but I don't think, listeners, let me know if you think we missed anybody, but I don't know that there's anybody else available that would that's going to solve our main problems. Could there be guys who could come in and be useful pieces? Sure, but I don't think there's anybody out there who solves our real problems, which means going to the international market. And it's been a real crapshoot for Austin FC so far, so it doesn't give me a ton of hope.
Yeah, man, I've been going through. Yeah, I just keep going through these, and it's just like not. Yeah, the people who are going to solve our problems are probably not coming from within the league because they're not available. Because Austin's problem is the problem that a lot of teams have, especially the teams that like aren't scoring goals and don't have a lot of contributions from internationals. Like we're chasing the same skill set that every team in the league that struggles to score goals is chasing. So it becomes like a really expensive hole to fill. I'm not sure exactly how you do it, but it doesn't seem like signing free agents from within Major League Soccer is the way to do it. Maybe trading, now we have this interleague trade thing. Maybe you find somebody who's surplus requirements at a club and also has the money, and maybe you make that move. But I feel like just like people who aren't wanted on the number that they're on from other teams are not going to solve Austin's problems.
Yeah, agreed. Anything else, Jeremiah?
No, let's wrap it up for this week. This week of joy and sunshine, talking about the offseason, hope springing internal for 2026.
Yeah, sorry to leave y'all on a downer, but hopefully we're wrong. Hopefully Rodo works some magic and there's a lot to look forward to. But right now, it seems like he's going to have to pull a rabbit out of a hat. Hopefully he does it. Before we wrap up, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on the internet, wherever you're on the internet. Thanks so much for listening. Next week, we will be joined by Scott Speck to share the results of our preseason over-under prediction game.
I'm terrified by. I know anything that's related to goals that we said over to is very, very wrong. I think we may have suggested that the front line of Austin FC would score more goals by themselves than the entire team scored all year. But I'm excited to hear how that turned out.
We've been wrong on a lot of stuff in past years. I think this has a chance of being like the largest gulf of how wrong we were on some of these predictions.
But the good thing is, like, we have this giant pool of listener predictions too, and I feel like everybody listening is probably equally as wrong in the same way as we are. So, like, we don't have to feel so bad about ourselves. Like, we're probably all too optimistic about the offense.
Yeah, that'll be a nice consolation prize. All right, we'll cover that and then any other Austin FC news that comes up between now and then. Until then, I'm Landon Cottam.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Think for nothing, you never.
La gente.
Oh my God.
Zula Chupa Boom Sauce.
Yeah.